This is Comic Picks by the Glick.
Hey, I'm your host, Jason Glick.
Hey, Jason, what's going on?
Okay, well, it's like I had to recalibrate plans for this podcast because after our initial ones fell through, but they are coming eventually. It's like hopefully next time at least. But fortunately, it's like I had something that I wanted to talk about, and even though I wasn't planning on talking about it right now, I had actually gone through and read everything to do it, and that is the the contents of the DC versus Marvel Omnibus. Yeah, that's right. The corporate forces that are Disney and Warner Brothers actually put down their swords long enough to allow this gigantic reprinting of all of the individual crossovers between Marvel and DC characters to be reprinted. Now, this is basically one of two um giant omnibus crossovers collections that are being reprinted. Um, and this is the one I was most interested in because the other one, which is basically the amalgam age of comics, basically involves like the seismic DC versus Marvel a mini series, and that led to the amalgam age of comics. Basically, a like a mashup of DC Marvel characters. Like what do you get when you combine Wolverine and Batman? You get Dark Claw. It's like that kind of thing. And I remember, like, and I did buy the Dark Claw comic when it came out because, dude, it's like, well, Wolverine and Batman. How could I not get something like that? But but this was like something that just like kind of like ran its own course because after after they did this, they also created their own jointly owned character named Access, who was going to be able to travel between like the DC Marvel universes. But after a couple of miniseries, that whole concept kind of fizzled out, and like no one ever talks about it in polite company these days. So and only DC and well, not really DC and Marvel, but Disney and Warner Brothers could only basically put down their gloves long enough to put out like stuff that had already been reprinted, such as that omnibus, which is eventually coming, but apparently there was a gigantic printer error um, that caused all the produced volumes of the collections to be pulped, which for reasons that are not being specified, that have not been publicly released, but could be related to the fact that some of these comics were written by a convicted by someone who's convicted of possession of child pornography, Gerard Jones. Maybe that's it, but they're not talking, and Rich Johnston of Bleeding Cool hasn't figured it out yet. So there you go. But in the meantime, we have what I think is probably the more significant of the two, which is basically the individual crossovers between various Marvel and DC characters over the decades, because this has been something that has has been going on since before I was born, really. Basically, when a it's like when a publicist named David Orbst came to Marvel and DC with the idea of hey, why don't we just make a crossover film featuring Superman and Spider-Man, and people that'll be like licensed print money right there, and that didn't work out. So when that didn't work out, well, why don't we just do a comic where we do that, and that's what led to the first DC Marvel crossover, Superman versus the Amazing Spider-Man: The Battle of the Century, written by Jerry Conway and illustrated by Ross Andrew. Char- um, characters who creators who have who had at that time worked for both DC and Marvel, and were basically agreed as hey, these guys can do justice to having both of these characters meet, fight, make up, and then take out like their their foes, who in this one shot are Doctor Octopus and Lex Luthor. It's like basically after a couple prologues where Luthor and Doc Ock are put into prison, and they wind up being put into the same my prison complex, and then breaking out together because they realize that hey, game recognizes game, so we're gonna break out together, and they're gonna combine our forces to do something truly evil and villainous. And if you're wondering, like, well, wait a second, it's like if like if Superman and Spider-Man like, exist in different universes, how is it the fact that they can just like go to like a conference and just like meet each other, and how can like Doc Ock and Lex Luthor be in the same prison complex? That makes no sense. Well, all I can say to that is get used to it. Because like yes, DC's Metropolis is like New York during the day, and Gotham is New York during the night, and throughout a lot of these one shots, you're just going to assume that they kind of exist in the same space, and that like they've just been aware of each other, but they've never actually like gone and met each other yet. So, which I imagine was like a lot easier to sustain disbelief, when this thing came out back in the late '70s, and that's also another big thing I want to say about the appeal of these things, because like this was written, like I said, this is written like before I was born, so I, as a 40-plus-year-old individual, like it was not the target audience for a lot of these one shots. I mean, even though like a lot of some of the subsequent one shots I'm going to talk about did come out back when I was like when I became an active comics fan. But like these are basically being written for someone who much younger and a much less sophisticated reader, such as it is, like than I am. And that's kind of like the mindset you have to go into when like trying to appreciate something like Superman versus the Amazing Spider-Man. Like the idea was like, hey, it's like these two characters are meeting for the first time, and yeah, they fight because there's a misunderstanding at first, and also because Luthor like fires a like red kryptonite beam at Superman that allows him to just be weak against Spider-Man's like spider strength blows, but that doesn't last long, and they they eventually like like work things out and realize that hey, we're on the same side, and that's how things go. Like they eventually like go up to the like the Injustice League space station that Luthor's commandeered, because he's trying to like create a he's trying to take control of a like satellite that is going to like like fire lasers and like hold the world hostage, or like maybe destroy it, because like he's kind of pissed that they haven't recognized his genius. But Spider-Man basically like gets Doc Ock on his side at the end, saying, hey, like yeah, it's like you want everyone to recognize your genius, and like all the money Lex is paying you, it's not gonna be worth anything. It's like if the world is destroyed, and like Doc Ock is like, how dare you, Luthor, like that kind of thing. This is what we get for like the first like for the first few stories, because because I think this is perfectly fine for what it is, and I imagine like I probably would have enjoyed it a lot more had I been able to read this when it came out, and if I had been more than just like nice thought in my parents' head at the time. So, but then it was followed up by a another crossover called Superman and Spider-Man: The Heroes of the Holocaust, written by future Marvel editor-in-chief Jim Shooter and legendary artist John Buscema. Instead of fighting Luthor and Doc Ock, this time it's Doctor Doom and the Parasite. Why the Parasite, you ask? Well, Jim Shooter was the co-creator of the Parasite, so there you go. Basically, Doom has created an idea that's going to like destroy all of the world's fossil fuels and making them reliant on his it's like on his like energy solution. It's like, and Superman and Spider-Man find themselves like trying to team up. It's like, and they just take him down. Oh, and also like the Hulk and Wonder Woman also feature into this as well. I admit I kind of like the Superman fighting the Hulk stuff more than like Spider-Man meeting Wonder Woman, because like Superman and the Hulk, like seeing these two guys like try and slug it out, that's something you want to see, like who would win in that regard. And we'll come back to Superman versus the Hulk later on. Spider-Man versus Wonder Woman, it just kind of seems like oh yeah, like Wonder Woman had her TV show back in the day, so we'll throw her in and see how she mixes with Spider-Man. It's fine. Um, but there are some like bits that I did like more than the original here. Specifically, the fact that when like Peter Parker is like convinced to come work for the Daily Planet by his buddy Jimmy Olsen. He finds out that like, oh wow, it's like I'm getting paid a lot more here. Like this is cool. And also when like Clark Kent like like goes over to the Daily Bugle, and Jonah Jameson's like hey, it's like I'm glad to have like a like report of your integrity here, Kent. That's kind of fun, like seeing how these characters would be like in their other characters' element. That kind of thing, like I wish we got a lot more of, like in these stories, because a lot of them just basically come down to the fact that hey, like there's heroes meeting, and then there's like villains that need to be taken out. There you go. That's the way a lot of these things play out. And well, I'll come back to my overall thoughts at the end. But then we've got Batman versus the Incredible Hulk, which is written by Len Wein and illustrated by the great Jose Luis Garcia Lopez. But Batman versus the Hulk, it's like kind of thing like what? Why would they like have a reason to like fight or like meet at all? Like what does the Batman say about the Hulk, and what does the Hulk say about Batman? Not a whole lot, really. Honestly, it's like I mean, like, Wine finds a good, at least like a decent setup in the idea that like Wayne Industries is working on a gamma gun, and the Hulk is like, and Bruce Banner is like saying, "Oh man, maybe I can like find out more about this in order to like cure my condition." But then as he's working on things, like everyone starts laughing and dying, and it turns out the Joker's like breaking in here in order to secure the gamma gun for his own ends. And then when Bruce freaks out and turns into the Hulk, and then Batman shows up to try and stop things, Joker like turns like the Hulk on to Batman, and Batman's got to like use his like martial arts knowledge to like avoid being squished by the Hulk. So it's fine. And then you think like, well, what about the Hulk? Which villain of his is like featuring in this story? Well, he's being represented by that great Hulk villain known as the Shaper of Worlds. Yeah, it's like he's essentially cosmic cube who draws his strength from like bringing characters like greatest fears to life. And sure, fine. I mean, like you could have just got the leader in here, or even just like a very angry General Thunderbolt Ross. But no, it's like it's overall like it's fine. It's like it's just like has a lot of like goofy ass stuff in here. This is like Batman and the Joker having to work together at one point because the Joker realizes that maybe this guy isn't the person like that I want to have like like ruling the world. And also like one bit when you realize that oh, Batman sure loves wearing his disguises under his like over his mask. So yeah, that's ridiculous. And then at the end, like the Joker like gets power over all reality, but then Batman figures out a way to just confuse him with enough choices. It's very silly and kind of ridiculous. And overall, it's like it's not terrible, but I can't say it's highlighted this volume. But what arguably is though is what comes next, and that's the Uncanny X-Men and the New Teen Titans in Apocalypse Now. It's like this is by probably the one creative team in this volume that I look at it and go, it's like, yeah, I'd probably still buy a comic by them today. And that is it's written by X-Men legendary X-Men writer Chris Claremont, and legendary artist period Walt Simonson. Basically the idea is that Darkseid wants to turn Earth into a second apocalypse in order to combat in use of his war against the eternal good guys of New Genesis. And so he tries to contain the secure the Phoenix Force in order to do this. It's like, and that naturally brings him into conflict with the X-Men, and it's like, and the Teen Titans, who are also like, because he's also apparently like recruited like Deathstroke the Terminator, like in his like in his scheme as well. It's like I mean, on one hand, it's like, yes, it's kind of like it's as floridly written as you expect of vintage Claremont, But if you're a longtime X-Men fan as I am, then yeah, it's like you'll probably like think this is perfectly fine. And Simonson's art, is big, bold, and energetic, and also it's like when he does like the whole New God stuff, because this is like a particular passion of his. It really works. Like it's dynamic, epic, and that final shot like of a who's stuck in the source wall at the end of the story like is definitely a keeper, as all like the single page and double page splashes like in this it's like in this story. It's like, I mean, I wouldn't say that it adds up to much in terms of like like impact between in these like characters stories, but it's like in terms of like like epic like an epic like meeting between these characters, it does it well enough. And also, not for nothing, it's the only X-Men crossover in the entire volume. So there you go. And that came out in, I believe, 81, and then there was nothing for well over a decade. Not until, well, we got Batman and Punisher League of Fire in the early 90s. How early 90s, you ask? Well, it's because like this Batman in this crossover is Jean Paul Valley, because we are in the thick of the Nightfall like crossover where he had taken over as Batman after Batman had his back broken by Bane. And well, so that means he gets to deal with Frank Castle when he comes to Gotham and try and tracking down his longtime nemesis Jigsaw, as Jigsaw is like trying to orchestrate a destruction of like the new Gotham reservoir. It's like using some experimental rocket fuel he's found. Um, the John Paul Valley versus like Frank Castle stuff is more of a like a meeting of like brute strength than than anything else, because like that like the thing about Valley is like he was someone who was willing to to kill villains. And I'm like, well, Punisher, well, that's his whole thing. So they work together enough in order to take down Jigsaw, but they just can't work together because they're just that violent. But it's all right. It's not terrible, but I I found myself much wanting to get to the next story in the collection, which was the second Punisher and Batman story, Deadly Nights, written by longtime Batman scribe Chuck Dixon before he became a right wing crank, and illustrated by John Romita Jr. back when he it's like I still like Romita's art right now, but he's also like had a lot. His art had a lot more like intensive grittiness that you can see right here. And so you have him illustrating a story where Jigsaw and Joker, Jigsaw teams with the Joker in order to become like a big time um villain in Gotham. It's like it works a lot better here, as does like Dixon's it's like no nonsense writing here. It's like it's decent fun, and even though it's like it kind of does hinge on a lot of stuff, because like it's like the Punisher would absolutely shoot the Joker in the face and that would be it, but we can't have that here. So it's kind of like when the Batman has to like step in and save the Joker. It's like you can understand like why he would do that, but at the same time though, it's like when Castle just at the end of the story says, "Hey, I'm getting back to New York City because things make sense there." You kind of feel what he's saying right there. There you go. Then you've got the first of two of these stories written by a guy who was huge at the time for both DC and Marvel, someone who could be reliably counted upon to deliver a quality story, and that is John Byrne. Before his style just became like incredibly outdated and just didn't didn't click with modern audiences, even though it's like like Marvel's editor-in-chief CB Cebulski has tried to like work with him and like in this modern era by getting into him to publish his alternate universe X-Men stuff. Um, like Byrne has had none of it, and he just does not want to work with Marvel and DC these days. And I can't blame him because like everything that he was doing up until this time he stopped working with them just kind of like seemed like it was just like mediocre at best. But the Hunger has a great concept because well it basically has Galactus like trying to sate his ever like his ongoing need for like for like sate to sate his ongoing hunger that will never ever be sated. And he and Silver Surfer has found like the perfect planet for him, Apocalypse, the home of Darkseid. And it's and Byrne does do a good job of like like conveying like a big planetary scale conflict between it's like between Darkseid and like the force that Galactus brings to bear there. And even though like most of it is just kind of meant to be 90s era Flash, in the sense that like hey, this is like stuff that's like happening in order to like show you how cool it is. Well, I will admit that the end of the story where Darkseid, where Galactus realizes why he can't consume Apocalypse, that's pretty well realized. As is Darkseid's final recriminating statement to like to the planet Devourer. It's pretty fun. It's pretty fun, and like I said, I at least enjoyed like reading it in this context. Then we get to the first of two Spider-Man and Batman team ups written by J.M. DeMatteis, who has a long history with the Wall Crawler, and Disordered Minds basically has a showing what happens when the when the Joker teams up with Carnage, after they've had some some awful like mind altering tech put into them that's rendered them like docile uh, like docile calm creatures of the of the law. And then like Carnage symbiote like breaks out, and then oh now they're crazy again. And I like the fact that there's a bit where Carnage like says like oh Joker, I love your work, you understand like the joke that life is, that like that like the living is just like one big joke, and that only answer to that is death. And then like Joker's like oh yeah, that joke. But then when like the Joker realizes his latest plan to just distribute poison gas like poison gas dispensing toys to to a Gotham children's charity, like Carnage is kind of like, no, why are you just like letting them like possibly die, and just like die slowly? Why don't you just murder them like like instantly? It's like, and Joker's like, oh, you don't get it, man. It's like that's, I mean, that's cute. That's the thing I most remember most about this. That sticks with me most about this thing, because it shows like a nice way like how these characters like work together. It's like, or would work together. It's like in this one instance, and that's what I think is missing from a lot of these stories. Just like ideas like showing you how these people work together. It's like a lot of them. It's just really like the heroes meet, they fight, they work together, and then pow, biff bam pow. Yes, really. Like they take out the bad guys, and that's really true here. I mean, I did like the art from Mark Bagley, because dude's kind of like the definitive Spider-Man artist in my eyes. And seeing him like here, it's like it's cool seeing like how his style is like remain consistent over these years, and I like that. And then moving on though, we got a big cosmic crossover between Green Lantern and the Silver Surfer called Unholy Alliances. Why are these alliances unholy? Well, it's because it involves an interdimensional crossover that initially sees Parallax, or the corrupted version of Hal Jordan, trying to convince the Silver Surfer that hey, I've just been wronged. It's like, I want to like go and recreate the city that was taken from me. Can I work with you to use your power cosmic in order to make that happen? And Silver Surfer is someone who has like lost his own like home as well. He sympathizes with Parallax and initially agrees with that. Meanwhile, Thanos has encountered like Green Lantern, and basically says that hey, yeah, like, I know that your your nemesis Parallax is it's like up to no good. It's like I've got a way to take him out, and I need your ring, power of your ring, in order to do that. I mean, like Kyle Rayner was a lot more gullible and generally portrayed as like the newbie DC hero at the time. So even though like this is like obviously like like misdirection on a lot of the villain's parts, I kind of like I do kind of like the idea like I thought that like the way they were like being faked out in order to work with these villains, that actually like, kind of worked for me here. And even though yeah, it's like they eventually do fight, but then they realize that sorry, Green Lantern and Silver Surfer eventually do realize that they're on the same side here. It's like that realization carries like a bit more weight here than it does with some of the other stories in these. Like it's like in this collection. I like and I like that at least. So I mean more so than the next one, which is like another Silver Surfer team up that basically has him meeting Superman and then having to match with their the chaotic beings of the universe at the time, because basically the Impossible Man and Mr. Mxyzptlk are up to no good, and they've been like trying to like like manage their own intergalactic like contest of wits, and it's fine. It's like I can't say that seeing them like be silly and ridiculous was a bad story, but it wasn't really engaging. I mean, Perez tells everything fine, but and Ron Lim, um, like also who does the art, does a solid job here. I mean, it probably would have looked better if Perez has illustrated it, but you can't have George Perez illustrate everything. So there you go. But next up though, it's like it's something that probably I honestly surprised I liked as much as I did. It's the Batman and Captain America crossover by John Byrne, and this is interesting because it's the one Elseworlds story in this entire collection. And when I say Elseworlds, I mean it is out of continuity compared to everything else, and that's because it basically tells the story of Batman and Captain America fighting it's like I'm fighting bad guys in the area of World War II. It's like I mean, Batman is fighting the Joker in Gotham when the story starts, and Captain America is fighting Nazis out in Europe. But then Cap gets a notice saying, "Hey, it's like we're calling you back to America," and as he does, like his like like the ship is attacked, like his plane is attacked, and Batman has to intervene in order to like save him and take out the assailants. So they get off on the right foot, but then when Cap gets back to America proper, he finds out that the Joker is like is doing stuff that is like helping benefit the Nazi war effort, but they're thinking like, oh, like he can't be like he's just like a patsy. It's like he's just someone like who's doing real work for the main bad guy, who we think is industrialist Bruce Wayne. But obviously, like it's revealed in short order that to the reader that hey, the real bad guy here is the Red Skull, obviously. But this is what ultimately endeared me to the story is that it's basically a straightforward, such a straightforward like good guys, bad guys. Like it's like I recognize who could have like only person who could have thrown that punch or stood up to it. Like you must be the Captain America. It's like and Cap goes, oh hey, only person who could recognize that would be Batman. Like it's like I said, it's so straightforward, corny, and sincere that I kind of liked it in spite of all that. So that's so yeah, it's like it's not bad. Not something I would have like gotten sought out for myself after like outside of this, but perfectly fine for what it is. Like it's the enjoyable kind of cheesy. That's what I want to say. And then you got two other dark gritty urban heroes teaming up. Well, Daredevil and Batman in An Eye for an Eye, by Daredevil writer and artist Daredevil writer D.G. Chester and artist Scott McDaniel. It's like who would given everyone a best-selling Daredevil arc fall from grace at the time. basically, Batman has come to New York to track down Two-Face, who has gone missing. And it turns out like Two-Face is like using these stolen drugs in order to create like a like a neuroprocessor in the brain of Mr. Hyde. And Daredevil is like gets in on this because hey, this is his town, and Batman's just in the like intruding there. It's like it's fine. I think Chichester and it's like Andy McDaniel do like a nice like give the entire story a nice gritty feel to it, or not really gritty, but like nice glossy gritty superhero feel to it. But it's like it doesn't really like tell you give you like a lot of insight into like how these characters would interact like beyond like beyond like meeting each other. I mean, like, yeah, it's like Batman and Daredevil are kind of grumpy at first, but then they get over it. And there you go. So it's fine. It's like I said, a lot of this stuff. It's not terrible. It's like I realize it's kind of like seeing a returning like trend here, but that's really how it goes. A little better though is the second Batman and Spider-Man team up called New Age Dawning. Again written by James DeMatteis, and this time illustrated by Bane co-creator Graham Nolan. It's basically the idea this time is that it's like Ra's al Ghul is manipulating the Kingpin into believing that he has a cure for the disease afflicting the Kingpin's wife, Vanessa Fisk, and so he wants to use the Kingpin's no it's like know-how in order to help re like basically like help basically advances like Al Ghul's like traditional feeling of like hey, like the world needs to be cleansed. And I think that like someone as cruel and vindictive as like you Wilson Fisk can help me here. And Batman and Spider-Man, it's like they meet up again, and I like the fact that that they get past the whole like we're gonna like are we gonna have a problem here like type mindset. Just the fact that they agree on the handshake they had with at the end of the previous crossover, and that was nice. And in the end, it's like I like the twist about where Fisk's loyalties really lay. So this was definitely not bad. It's like and I think that it does benefit from the like the previous like story being told these characters. So good on DeMatteis for advancing that right there. And then going on, we've got something that's like much more like an outlier in terms of like like what to expect here. We got Superman and the Fantastic Four, the Infinite Destruction, and this one I liked because it actually did something that I wanted to see, more like done more with all these characters. Just what would these characters like do differently if they had been teamed up together? And I like the idea that that's teased at the beginning that that Galactus, he may have been like involved in the destruction of Krypton. And so again it turned, and because apparently he was scouting Krypton as a place for a potential herald, that a potential herald of his could be born, because like the Kryptonians abilities like under a yellow sun. So when he eventually like so when he like eventually does meet up with Superman later in the story, it's like he basically converts him into his herald. Now you've got a Superman imbued with the power cosmic, who's now out to like find out worlds for the for his master in order to consume. Who can stop him? Well, the Fantastic Four, obviously, and it's like they're obviously invested in this, but they've also have to deal with another villain who is like tagging along with the story. Cyborg Superman, Hank Henshaw, who basically just wants to meet with Galactus. He thinks like he's great Herald material. Yeah, uh, yeah, for sure. So Jurgens does a good job just like playing out how it's like how like the Superman as Galactus's Herald would work, and just how it would ultimately fail in the end. I genuinely like that, and like I said, Jurgens gets a lot of credit for just like finding a way to plug Superman into a familiar Marvel role, and just showing us just how that would play out here. It's I was entertained, and even though like he's only responsible for the layouts here, Art Thibaert is responsible for the finishes. He gives things it's an appreciably 90s look, like Jim Lee-esque look to the proceedings. So I mean, it's not like on level of the master himself, but it's like good solid work, and like gives good energy as well. It's like definitely one of the better ones in the story, like in this collection. And also following up to that is another Superman crossover. This time specifically with the Incredible Hulk, written by Roger Stern and illustrated by Steve Rude. Steve Rude's art has a inherent classical Silver Age look to it. Basically, I think that like Rude kind of like draws like with a kind of like detail and style that we remember a lot of like the '60s era comics having, and that's like a good chunk of the like this one shot's appeal here, even though it basically doesn't really do anything with the idea like Superman meeting up with Bruce Banner back when he was still working with the military, under like General Ross's like thumb, even after he had been turned into a Hulk, or was having to deal with the like the Hulk's transformations. It's it's perfectly fine. It's a perfectly fine story that like also finds a way to work in Lex Luthor's machinations as well. But overall, it's like like I said, this is like something that I appreciate. I like more for seeing the art, and also for its like eventual acknowledgement of like current like comics trends, like the fate of Betty Banner as well. So it's fine. Then you get the final story in this collection. Finally, really, yeah. Batman Daredevil, King of New York, by like prolific Batman writer Alan Grant and artist Eduardo Barreto, which basically finds you know like Daredevil coming to Gotham in order to track down some evidence that will lead to the Kingpin's conviction, but eventually finds its way into the hands of the Scarecrow, who basically uses it to usurp the Kingpin's control of his criminal empire in New York. It's it's all right. It's like I mean that like and like I think that the Scarecrow here just like doesn't come off as a is a really effective villain. She was like saying who do you want to like put up against like Daredevil here. It's like I think the feeling that the only reason he was chosen is because like the Daredevil is sorry Scarecrow is a villain who like uses fear, like a fear gas and fear toxin as his methods. So basically, what happens when he uses it on the Daredevil? Oh, Daredevil's man without fear. He just laughs it off, and I get the feeling that's the main reason, the only reason he was chosen here. Even though like it's fun to see like Wilson Fisk be like physically violent. Yeah, I mean he even gets in a like a fully armored helicopter to take out try and take out Batman and Daredevil, and then like Scarecrow on the on the Statue of Liberty. Like I said, I appreciate how physical Grant has like Fisk getting here, but in the end, like it kind of doesn't really amount for much. It's fine, and it's probably worth noting that this was the last DC Marvel crossover until they decided to they like they dropped their guard years later to allow Kurt Busiek and George Perez to do Justice League, JLA, and Avengers. So, and to be honest, like even though I think that like a lot of the stories in here were just fine, and that it's like I should be honest, I'm not sure. It's like I probably would have like I'd recommend the volume if you're looking for like like great comics. Really, it's like I mean, yeah, it's like it's got like all these like historic meanings between these between these hero characters and all, but stories basically kind of boil down to like, hey, the heroes meet. There may or may not be a misunderstanding that leads them to fight, and then they like team up to fight their like major villains at the time. Like it's okay, really, but the main appeal I see in this, and what's probably going to keep this on my shelf for a good long while, at least until I am I need to like sell it in order to like buy even more comics and or make rent at some point. I hope that doesn't happen, but like I said, this is a piece of history in the sense that it's basically like two companies that were at loggerheads, basically rivals for like a lot of good long portion of their existence. Like they eventually find a way to like work together for for their own benefit, and have their characters take like work together, and it's like and meet and fight and just interact in ways that were occasionally kind of kind of interesting. So so like I said, I appreciate this volume more as a piece of history than as example of like good comics. So yeah, it's that's why it's going to remain on my shelf for a while. But at the same time, though, I would kind of like to check out JLA Avengers at some point, simply because Busick is a great writer. Um, Perez is a great artist. But the problem is, it's like the uh, the reprint that was done like just before Perez's passing a couple of years back. Well, I should have like gone in for that when it happened, because now it's out of print, and it's like retailing for like it's crazy expensive. It's like like 150 $200, depending on depending on like what you want to get it for on eBay. So hopefully like Marvel and DC will realize that hey, maybe we can just like um drop a guard again to like give this a proper reprint at some point. Because I'd like to see what like Busick does, like when given like a larger canvas to work with, and like a lot of the characters, a lot of the creators had here. Because like I said, the DC vs Marvel Omnibus, it's fine, but it's really only worth owning if you kind of like want to own a piece of history rather than like something you're going to want to go back to and reread over and over again. So there you go. That's what I think. And yeah, it's like I'm probably not going to be getting the Amalgam Age Omnibus unless I get really drunk one night and decide like, hey, this is like a good idea. Click and order it on Amazon. So I don't know.
So,
Like,
so it's
you
a
got any thoughts on
fun,
this, John?
it's a fun concept, but eh, you know, overall, what do you think? It's just
It's I don't know. It's like I said, it's I let's say I really appreciate getting this from cheapgraphicnovels.com, because they were selling it for like 40% off cover price, and
hmm.
I pre-ordered this because like there's only going to be one printing of this collection. So if it's already already out of print, then you're just gonna like like hope that Amazon's like 10% off discount is like the best you're gonna get. So
Okay. Do you know what you want to talk about next time?
well, hope like the hope right now the plan is that like there won't be any complications next time. So Christina and I will be talking about the latest Star Trek Lower Decks graphic novel, Warp Your Own Way. But after that, well, hey, it's like John, that the new volume of Transformers is coming out. It's coming out soon, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So hey, that's on the docket as well. So like I said, I I hope that it's going to be talking about like lower decks and then Transformers. That's going to be the plan. But we'll see next time. So hopefully, you know that that's where we're going.
All right. I'm gonna catch you next time on Comic Picks by the Glick.
Yep. Later's.